camera action.
Good morning, everyone. So, this is my training needs analysis in artificial insemination like ruminants and C2. So, next, respondents provide summary of learners' characteristic form results. So, the average grade in English out of my 10 respondents, there are 50% in 90 to 94, while the 20% is 80 to 84, while the other 30% is 85 to 89. Then sa math naman po, there are 30% in 90 to 94, then 10% to 80 to 84, and 60% in 85 to 89. So, the highest educational attainment, all of my respondents is in college level. And in ethnicity and culture, there are 100% Bicolano. So, the sex po, 30% are female and 70% is male. And also, sa age naman po, there are 40% 20 years old, and there are 20% 20 years old, and sa 26 to 27, there are 20%, and sa 19 years old, there are 10% rather, and sa 23 years old, there are 10%. And sa physical disability naman po, there are 1% respondent or 10% rather, and 90% are not. The training level completed naman po, there are 80% none, and the 20% is have a training level completed, which is the EPAS and C2. So their learning style, 60% are in visual, and 30% are in reflector, and 10% in auditory. The other needs, 30% of my respondents are financially challenged, and the others, 70% are not. Survey result, tabulated responses from the self-assessment check, tables, and chart. So, for the basic competency, there are 4 units of competency. So, for the 4 units of competency, all of them are respond yes in the basic competencies, as you can see. And the common competencies naman po, there are 3 units of competency, which is 90% to 10%, and sa unit of competency, use farm tools and equipments, there are 90% yes, 10% no, and sa performance estimation and calculation naman po, there are 60% said yes, and 40% answered no. And for the core competencies rather, there are 2 units of competency, which is, as you can see po, there are 60% yes and 70% yes in the second unit of competency, which is napakababa po yung kaalaman nila in the core competencies. So, in elective competencies naman po, there is 1 unit of competency, and for the unit competency na po yun, there are 90% answered yes, and 10% answered no. So, analysis, competencies achieved. This training needs analysis surveys that shows that respondents had an already foundational skills and knowledge in language, literacy, and as for the basic competencies in the qualification. So, competencies needing improvement. However, there are some competencies achieved. There are also competencies that needs to improve. It is the core artificial insemination skills, specifically in performing artificial insemination and assessing readiness. So, for conclusion and recommendation, final summary of training needs based on both forms. The training needs analysis shows a general need for artificial insemination training, while respondent shows strength in basic skills like communication, they required more focus on training for artificial insemination techniques, especially performing an artificial insemination. So there are the documentation, distributing the DNA form to the respondents, and collecting, sorting, and checking each DNA form, and for appendices, answered DNA form. That would be all. Thank you.